Hey everyone, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop, and we're just coming into summer here in Southern Oregon, and what that usually means for us is trout fishing. So today we're going to tie a couple different flies. The first one's going to be a trout sculpin pattern using a few new products that we have here in the shop. So I'm just going to get it going here. We're going to start off with a Tiemco 5263 hook, which is a size 4. And on there we're going to have a 1/4 inch Spirit River black nickel cone head, and just start wrapping back towards the bend of the hook. And the first thing I'm going to put on here is going to be Ostrich in olive. I'm just going to clip a little bit off of the base there, and this is just going to add a little wiggle and movement to the fly, giving it those sculpin. When you see them, when you sort of spook them on the riverbank, you'll see how they swim so skittishly. So you do need, a nice tail material that's just going to wiggle for you. And on top of there, I'm going to use a product we just got into the shop. They're micro silicone legs, and these are the barred pumpkin, and they're really cool for a lot of these little trout flies. And I'm just going to tie 2 to go right on top of that ostrich, if I can get them to lay down there. So we're going to start by putting in ultra wire in silver, and I always use the medium for the steelhead and the trout flies that I tie. Medium just seems to get the job done for all of them. And I like to, anytime I'm tying in wire, I like to wrap it all the way through the body. Doesn't matter as much when you're dubbing, but when I use flash as a body material, instead of bulking it up back here and having it clipped, I like to have it run evenly all the way through the body. And then I just have a nice barred brown Chinese hackle here. I like to pull all the feathers back before I tie it in. And same thing with the feather. I like to wrap those through the body also, so that it builds a little bulk in the body, especially if you're not going to lay down wire to give the fly weight. And that is a whole other point. In a lot of my trout flies, especially the streamers, I don't put any wire in the fly. I'd rather fish a sink tip, because I think the fly is a lot more lively when it's not weighted down by wire. Just going to pick this dubbing apart before I spin it on here. Usually get my dubbing started before I really start spinning it onto the thread. It just helps give it something to catch onto when you're spinning. We will want to think about the proportion of the fly, building that dubbing up a little bit, because it'll help rest the next part of the fly on there. Just making nice, consistent wraps up towards the front. I like to come back on top of the stem and just lock it down after I've clipped it off. And this, a lot of people counter wrap wire. I tend to just run the wire up the same direction. Seems to be just as strong, and I like the way it looks a little bit more than counter wrapped wire. Just come in close, clip that guy off. And so right on top of that body, I'm going to lay another, basically another stage of ostrich in the same color, and get it to come back essentially to lay in line with the ostrich you put down before. And that'll just give a nice long, slender profile. And I'm going to tie in more micro silicone legs here on the front, and they're going to be tied in a little differently. The front ones, or the back ones, just went straight on top of the fly. The front ones I actually like to have hang underneath the fly, because if I'm jigging the fly at all, it seems to give it a really nice action to have these guys tied in from the bottom. And I'll just probably leave them to length just like that. And then we're going to use these new brushes that we have in from Fair Flies, and they come in a couple different varieties. This one is made in their trout line, and it's just a nice medium olive with copper flakes in there. Really a perfect color for tying sculpins and stuff like this. They also do saltwater variations and steelhead and salmon ones as well. And really, because these things are so dense, you will just want about one wrap, maybe 1 1/4, because these puppies are packed pretty densely in there. And really try and wrench down on your thread when you're tying that down. And then I, just for security's sake, grab that material and wrap back a little ways. It'll just help keep that wire attached there. Gives a nice big bushy profile to the fly. And then what we're going to do, we have a whole Indian hen neck just in natural brown, and I'm just going to take 2 feathers off of there and marry the tips, so just match the tips up in length, and then depending on the size of your fly, that's how much you'll peel this back. But this is going to end up being really, on this fly, it'll be the cheek and the pec fin, really just the buildup of those sculpin, which have such a broad profile up towards the top. So I'm gonna, instead of laying them down with the fly, I'm gonna flip them so that the outside of the inside of the feather is showing out, and try and get this. And I'll show you the profile that we're looking for here. Just looks like 2 big fins sticking out there. You want them really laying straight out like that. In the water, they will get pressed back quite a bit, but it's nice to have them there. And I'm going to take another brown variegated saddle hackle here and wrap it on the front, and use some of the longer parts of the feather without being too close down to the base, so it's not too stiff to work with. Probably just going to take about 1 inch worth of material and tie it in. And just get a couple wraps of that. And that just helps build a little bit of profile up towards the front of the fly, which is pretty important in a little sculpin pattern. And I'm actually going to throw a little bit of dubbing in there, which helps secure that cone head in there a little bit. And then I'll just do a whip finish and we're done here. These can kind of get stuck together, so it's nice just to clip them off there, and those legs will just wiggle and dangle in the water. That's the summer sculpin from the Ashland Fly Shop, tied with our new Fair Flies brush, a couple of new legs, a really effective little fly in a lot of the waters we fish here in Southern Oregon and Northern California. Thank you for tuning in.